Welcome back to the Puckn Pod, everybody. My name is Joe.
My name is Brandon.
And I'm Paul.
Gentlemen, we've got another fun one today. It's playoff time, NHL playoff time, and there's so much happening. Can we talk a little bit before about the current stuff? Let's talk about the previous round. Round one. We're currently in round two. There's so much going on, but round one was pretty exciting as well.
There was a lot happening in the way of not necessarily upsets, I don't think, but more some unexpected Game 7s, for example. In the Atlantic, you've got Florida over Tampa Bay in 5 games. Like, what are you talking about? I never had that. You could have given me 10 opportunities. Well, I mean, I guess that's a stupid stat because there's only 7 games, but I never would have thought that would ever happen. 5 games for Florida. As one example, the Oilers, after being down 2-0 in their series with LA, come back and win 4 straight. Like,
sweep
wow.
it thereafter. Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Reverse sweep kind of thing almost, but
It's probably my fault for the Oilers. I've been crapping all over them all year, and it's elevating them to this level that even I couldn't imagine. And honestly, good on them. It's been some pretty good hockey to watch, pretty entertaining hockey in the end.
Yeah,
that's one thing that they always are. Usually is entertaining, right? Yeah. They could be down 8-1 and they're not out of the game.
Yeah.
So it's just and there's not many teams that can come back like the Oilers can. There's a few that you always have to worry about in the league with the firepower, but I think Edmonton, they've done it a lot. Especially really down the stretch of the towards the end of the season.
Yeah, they really have.
Florida's one of those teams too that kind of just can come back. And considering like the Lightning and the Panthers, when we're looking at the Atlantic, they were, besides the Leafs making major changes with Lott and Carlo, they were the other 2 teams that made some pretty significant changes. You know, Seth Jones, Brad Marchand, and Vitek Vanacek for the Panthers, and then you have the Lightning that got Bjorkstrand, and Gord. So they made like significant upgrades. So I was expecting that series to be a lot closer than it was. It's quite surprising, same thing, that Florida took it in 5 games. However, you know, they're the defending Cup champions, so you have to give them some credence for that fact. And Lightning have been on a bit of a downturn over the last few years.
Yeah. What I think is most shocking about the Lightning is the fact that they might as well just take the next couple of years off because they don't have a draft pick until like 2031 or something. You know what I mean? Like, they've really exercised their future, and they're just going to have to rely on free agency. And I mean, I guess they have that going for them in a way. They're in a low tax state, beautiful weather. Besides, most of the year, but
I mean, they do get a rainy season. They
do. Oh, absolutely, they do. But I mean, I was down there in December, the beginning of December, and it was 24 degrees, bright and sunny.
Yeah.
You know, so it's one of those attractive places. So maybe they can retool through free agency, especially with the cap going up.
24 degrees Celsius, by the way.
Celsius, yes. Thank you, Celsius.
For those watching from the United States.
So it's gonna be an interesting series of off seasons, I think, for them. I mean, that's well into the future, but I'm really curious. I had a buddy that one of my customers comes into work, and he's a big Tampa Bay fan. And after the series lost, he's like, "What are we gonna do?" He's like, we were all, as Tampa fans, kind of counting on them making a big push this year because we all know that what?
Yeah, right? Exactly. Well, and you know what you gave up to get to where you're at, and then all of a sudden, look where you are. I mean, the sort of catch-22 is you end up facing Florida in the first round. Florida is this dominant team. They played well throughout the whole regular season, and here they are, you know, defending Cup champions. You're gonna have to put up a lot of effort to try and defeat this team, and then they end up taking it to you in 5. It's definitely. It was a little I'll say this. It was a little surprising not to see John Cooper possibly getting let go. They did make a statement saying that John Cooper's coming back. I was hoping for it a little bit as a Canuck fan. As you guys know, Rick Tocchet no longer going to be the head coach of the Vancouver Canucks. So for me, I was excited for the opportunity of possibly having somebody like John Cooper, being a BC boy. Maybe that's potential, but no, it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. So.
With that being the case, do you think there's a possibility now because the Abbotsford Canucks are playing in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So there's a possibility that Manny Malhotra gets promoted.
I would argue, and I'm not, obviously I have no ties to the front office. I have no idea what they're thinking, but I would argue he's probably the number one contender to take the job, just for the fact that Abbotsford's still playing in the playoffs. They're playing really well.
Yeah.
They're playing good hockey. They're currently up 2-1 in their series in the second round. There's a potential for that for sure. And of course, the big benefit really is that he plays a similar structure to what Tocchet was playing. So it's exactly what the front office would want. That being said, he has no NHL coaching experience other than assistant coaching experience, right?
With the Leafs.
And with the Canucks, actually. He was an assistant coach with the Canucks before the Leafs. So, yeah, and he knows what it takes to be a coach in that kind of market, I think is an important factor, too.
Well, Vancouver, Toronto markets are pretty nasty sometimes. So
Exactly, right? And so, yeah, I think potentially he's probably the front runner. There are obviously veteran coaches out there that could take the position, but really, if you're thinking about, keeping a similar structure to what they played this year and last year, it would make more sense for them to go with somebody like Malhotra.
Was it just Tocchet that left on the coaching staff?
So far. Yeah, Adam Foote's, from what I've been told, Adam Foote is also a potential head coach candidate, and he's also looking for other opportunities. So from what it looks like, that if he doesn't get the job, he could end up moving on somewhere else to be an assistant coach or a head coach.
The thing about that is that Alvin and Rutherford are going to have to make a decision immediately on a head coach, because they don't really get to make the decisions on the other coaches.
That's right.
It's going to be up to whoever they appoint the head coach.
That's right. And honestly, this is going to be an off season for the books for the Canucks. They've got so much stuff to worry about.
There's a lot going
on. And so, yeah, it's definitely, as a fan, it's just you think to yourself, what else can go wrong, and so it's just sort of the mentality of let's hope that, they can kind of right the ship, and so that's where it starts, is with the coach, for sure.
Well, we already know that there's one controversial coach that's off the market now, and that's Joel Quenneville got hired by the Anaheim Ducks today.
Yeah, controversial.
Controversial.
What do you mean?
Brandon's pretending like he doesn't understand the controversy behind Joel Quenneville's hiring, but he knows.
We all know.
I mean, he knows. I mean, it's definitely a controversy, and this is a tweet that I saw today. It was announced today specifically. A tweet that I saw today was that this person said, if you have to make a statement after you hire somebody as to why you made the decision to hire that person, it's probably not a good hire, really.
So they are worried about optics,
exactly,
right? Clearly. So
it's literally the day of the hire. They're like, wait, just before you get mad at us, here's why we did it. Okay, but that's still not a good look for you, Anaheim Ducks, they're going to be an interesting team to watch over the next little while. It'll be interesting to see kind of what structure he decides to go with and have them play. I almost wonder what we see kind of in the off season with them, in terms of what we saw with Babcock when he got hired by Columbus. You remember the controversy behind that? Well, I wonder if we're going to see something similar with him, in the offseason, where players are getting to know their coach.
He's going to need to be squeaky clean through the rest of his career at this point. There's no arguing the talent as a coach, right? He's won multiple championships, even though one of those championships is tarnished by what happened.
Yeah.
There's no questioning the talent as a coach, but now that he's being seen in the public sphere for what happened with that whole scandal with Kyle Beach, he can't really make a mistake at this point.
I mean, he's sitting second right now in all-time wins in the NHL, so
Yeah.
he clearly has an idea on how to coach.
Yeah.
It's the other stuff that is, even in 2010 when the controversy started, social media, the availability of information was around, but still nothing like today, right? We all know that. We can probably agree on that. But it's, when he started coaching to even that point in 2010, that's probably a period of time where a lot of stuff probably got swept under the rug, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yep.
The highest amount of unfortunate situations.
Totally. Yeah.
But now they need to work super, super hard and be aware of every single thing that happens, and he's going to be under an absolute microscope. and he's going to be for probably the rest of his career, right? So my question would be, with the timing of his ban lifting aside, why now?
Yeah.
Why not just leave him be? It's not like, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's the direction they're trying to go, but Anaheim's a very young team.
Yeah.
And you bring in an old school guy like this, and you guys can, we saw this with Sheldon Keefe in Toronto. And I don't know about necessarily talking to Vancouver, the background stuff, how he treated the players. I'm not sure. I've always understood that Tocchet was a player's coach. People love him. The players love him, right?
Yeah.
But you bring in an old school guy like Quenneville to Anaheim with this young team, these young players, and we all know how sensitive the hockey culture has become. And these young kids coming up, it's been scrutinized for a couple of years now. So it makes you wonder, why now? Why not leave him be, right?
Totally.
It's one of those things, like, to bring in someone controversial, like, you're really walking a fine line. Obviously, Columbus did that with Babcock. There's the possibility of that with Quenneville. And like you said, I'm not docking Quenneville as a coach. I'm docking him as, unfortunately, as a human being in regards to kind of what happened. Boston kind of went through that a couple of years ago with signing Mitchell Miller, the prospect that had bullied that one disabled kid.
I think Montreal went through something similar with, was it Lamoureux
Logan Mailloux.
Mailloux.
Yeah, he was had an SA kind of case that was against him. So it's one of those things, like, it might not stick to you for the rest of your hockey life, but at least as a club. But it's still, like, stuff's frowned upon. You you really have to be shedding a good light in the long term with it.
And the other part of it too, like, you should be smarter than that as a team to really consider something like this. You're literally introducing controversy into your team now, and now you're looking at fans who know this history going, should I be cheering for this team anymore? And I know the same thing happened in Edmonton when they made their hire for their general manager, when they brought in Evander Kane. These kind of things, they started becoming the team of controversy. And I know it's frustrating for a lot of fans when they think, I can't support this kind of thing and cheer for the team at the same time. It's like putting yourself between a rock and a hard place.
Well, and you could put that towards the playoffs, right? Because the fans are so important to a team during the playoffs. Like, having your fan morale up is actually quite important to the team.
100%.
Just because of how they drive it. Like, even with the Leafs game that saw the other night, there was an interview afterwards. They were talking about the fans and how the fans do their part to drive them and make them have the confidence to do what they're doing in the playoffs right now. Yeah. It's super important, and you don't really want to mess with that.
And you brought up another thing about hiring somebody like Quenneville, being an old school coach, right? Like, playing a style of hockey that maybe doesn't exist anymore when you consider the old school mentality
or a certain expectation of your players.
Yeah, and so that's another question that gets raised is
risen.
Is his style of coaching going to work in today's NHL? He hasn't coached in 5-6 years.
Yeah.
Are we going to be able to see the same kind of winning mentality in the team that he's about to coach that we used to see? Because the mentality isn't there anymore.
So the people in Anaheim are going to say, we hope so. Exactly. The rest of the league is going to say,
crossed.
We hope not.
Well, and it might
especially those of us in the Pacific Division.
That's true. It might be like when the Leafs first had Babcock for the first year and a half, where they weren't excelling for the first little bit. It wasn't until the system was implemented and the players that he wanted in place were there that they started to improve. So it might be the same thing with Quenneville being there. He might have a bit of time on the coaching side, and again, it's public figure side too. It's going to take a bit of time to get back to having some semblance of importance, I guess.
And Anaheim's kind of become one of those perennial underachieving teams.
Yeah.
Right? Along the lines of, say, don't shoot me, but Montreal Canadiens,
Buffalo.
The Columbus Blue Jackets, Buffalo, Utah, although they've had a good year this year, but I mean, finally, right? They're progressing.
And they've had a year. I mean, Utah is another example of a team that seems to be getting things handed to them almost, it feels like. And I mean, you know what? This is a team that's been, Winnipeg, Phoenix to Arizona to Utah now, and then to have them kind of finish where they finished, but then they end up winning the lottery. They are now, and I say winning the lottery, they're one of two teams that won the lottery. They went from 14th to 4th. Which is pretty awesome, except when you're Vancouver sitting at 15, you'd be like, how about one more number for us? Eh?
Yeah.
But like they're getting these sort of lucky draws. They're in a position where they're also, they're looking at improving their team this offseason, and it's like they have the opportunity to do so now with that number 4.
Well, they have a name now.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got the Utah Mammoth.
Utah Mammoth.
Yeah. What do you guys think of that?
I actually like it. I will say, when I first announced it, I was like, I don't know. I liked Yeti better, blah, blah, blah.
I do too, yeah.
But I will say, like, the one thing that they're sort of doing a favor for themselves is the logo. The logo, the one thing I really like about NHL logos specifically, and I'll use the Minnesota Wild logo as an example.
It's actually a similar look to it.
Yeah,
too.
and it's just sort of that, like, hidden stuff within the logo that I like. And Utah has that with the mountain range kind of as the head of the mammoth, and then the U and the tusks and stuff like that, like just those little hidden details. Apparently, the shape of the state is also in the logo and in some capacity.
Right.
I think it's the snow cap or something like that is the shape
the
of
case,
it. Yeah,
that would make sense.
So like little details like that, I really like, and I like the color scheme and everything. So
I definitely like the colors.
Yeah.
The logo's cool.
They kept the same colors that they've had this year.
That's right. Yeah.
I like the name. I really like the logo. I thought the logo was really nice. I was still unfortunate because of the copyright, they couldn't do it. I was going for the Yeti. I really hoped that they could have been the Utah Yeti, but I understand that there was a copyright issue with that, so that's why they couldn't.
Well, it's a copyright issue with the cup company, basically the Yeti Cup company.
Yeah.
I don't understand the deal though. Like, why is this such a problem? But I think it has something to do with like just the word Yeti, the way it's used in such a manner, like sports-wise, that the cup company just wasn't happy about it. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they wanted a specific amount of money for it to work, and they just said it's not worth this,
right.
to just chase a name or whatever. So,
yeah, and like I said, nothing against the mammoth. I think the mammoth is going to be a good name for them. It's cool finally having, I guess, a different animal, because they've had cats and wolves and all these things, and we're going to finally have an elephant in the NHL. So
I saw a funny tweet the other day when they announced it that it was like sports teams with Jurassic mascots or whatever, Jurassic themed mascots, and like there's 2 NHL teams, I think. The Mammoth and
it was the Ice Age. Logo.
Yeah, that's right. The Predators with the saber-toothed tiger, and then like of course there's a bunch of other ones too, like in other sports. Yeah, so it's just kind of funny. Like there, you can only do so much, right? Like when it comes to sports teams, you can only do so much. At least they have a name now. We no longer have to call them the Utah Hockey Club, but it'll take some getting used to call them the Mammoth. I think we're always just going to call them Utah for a little while.
Yeah. Anyway. When I hear Mammoth, all I can think back to is like NHL 2004, like franchise mode.
Yeah.
And the Mammoth was one of like the pre-selected teams you could use or create. Yeah.
How many guys who have had like NHL franchises for years are like, I'm suing. That's my team. So funny. But there's obviously Anaheim is not the only team that was searching for a head coach. Of course, Vancouver being another one of them. But there's like 7 other teams, I believe, looking for head coaches right now. I heard a rumor yesterday, or was it today? It might have been today. Rick Tocchet was also, so he was interviewed for that Anaheim job, which I'm like, wait a sec, I thought you left Vancouver to be closer to family. What's happening here? Rumor has it he's also interviewing for the Seattle job. He's also interviewing for Boston and Philly. Those are the 3 other locations I've heard that he's being talked to about. Of course, it's not just Rick Tocchet. There's other coaches as well, but
I could live with Tocchet in Philly. I would have a really hard time if he got the job in Boston.
It wouldn't surprise me at all, to be honest. I mean, when you consider, Lindholm and Zadorov are both in Boston, I wouldn't be surprised that they're like, hey, you need to get Rick Tocchet as our coach. He had them in Vancouver for that, half a season, and he does make an impression. So,
what do you think happens first? Rick Tocchet gets hired, or the Canucks hire a new coach?
I will go as far to say the Canucks hire a new coach.
You think so?
Yeah. I think it's going to be quite a process for Rick Tocchet because there's multiple teams looking at him.
He's sought after. Huge,
yeah,
right?
and so it's going to take a little while. Yeah, I think there's a couple of coaches out there. If it's not Manny Malhotra, there's a couple other coaches out there that I could see them kind of going for. Todd Nelson being one of them. He's been somewhat sought after as well in the NHL for a little while. He's got a winning record in the AHL. He's won, I think, 3 or 4 Calder trophies under multiple teams, not just one. So, when you consider like that kind of winning style of coaching, I can see that being sought after in the NHL.
I heard rumors that Jay Woodcroft is trying to get back into NHL head
Yes, I
coaching
heard that
right?
too, and I heard people keep telling me that he's a good candidate for Vancouver, and I'm like, no thanks. The guy coached Edmonton, no thanks. Although Todd Nelson also coached Edmonton for like half a season, I think. I just, whatever, Jay Woodcroft. I didn't like him as a coach when he coached Edmonton personally, but
he might be a decent assistant for somebody. Maybe he'll be Talkett's assistant somewhere. Who knows?
Apparently, though, he gets a lot of praise from what I've been told. Like everywhere I'm hearing, he does get a lot of praise from around the NHL. So maybe he is more sought after than I give him credit for. But
yeah, fair enough.
I don't know. I've heard that Todd Nelson's one of those names that are really like kind of out there, and he's interviewing for jobs and stuff. So we'll see what happens. I like, for me, all I want in Vancouver is consistency when it comes to some sort of structure. I know Malhotra will be able to bring that. I know somebody like Nelson would be able to bring that, considering what he's done in the AHL. But for me, I just want something that's gonna bring some sort of structure and consistency.
Do you think, with obviously Tocchet having the success that he had for at least the 1 year in Vancouver, do you think he gets somewhere close to the same money that Mike Sullivan got from the Rangers?
That's tough to say. I mean, it was his decision to leave Vancouver, so it might come down to the point where it's like he just gets what he gets. I don't know. It depends on what the teams are willing to pay him. Maybe if like, say, Seattle wants him bad enough, maybe that's what's going to take to get him to sign there. Maybe he ends up signing for like $6 million a year. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, well, obviously there's no salary cap on coaching
coaches,
staff, right?
That's right. Yeah,
on staff, period. So
yeah, you just need an owner who's willing to pay it. Basically,
it's interesting because I think the opposite of you, and I think that Rick Tocchet will get hired before the Canucks hire a head coach. The reason I think so is, one, that teams are going to want to have their head coach set before the draft. Yeah. Right. Most likely, not always the case, but I would think most likely that's probably in the plans. And on the other side of things, the Canucks, Abbotsford Canucks, which we're talking about with Malhotra,
are still playing.
They're still playing.
Yeah.
They could play another, there's 2 more rounds after this one, correct? They're in the second round now?
Yeah.
And I will say, like, I agree with you on that specific matter. I agree with you. I think ultimately, like, they could be interviewing Malhotra right now and say, hey, tentatively, we've got a deal. You're going to be our next head coach, but we can't announce it until after the Abbotsford Canucks are out. You need to keep coaching the Abbotsford Canucks, basically, to a championship or whatever. But
let's face it, Joe, Vancouver does not need any more headlines right now.
I know. But ultimately, I mean, we need good news more than anything.
Good headlines.
I think that's the thing. Us Canuck fans in general, Abbotsford and Vancouver, we just need good news. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, ultimately, it just comes down to, I think with Tocchet, I think really what it comes down to is just like what team he ends up signing with. Like if he really wants to go to Philly, then maybe it's just a matter of Philly giving him the right amount of money, and he's like, sure, let's do it. Whereas if it's somebody like Seattle, maybe it's going to take him a lot to stay on the West Coast and the Pacific Northwest.
You wonder if he has the patience for a rebuilding team.
Yeah, I can't see it. I know we were listening. They were talking about that on the radio today.
You're talking about Philly and Boston. Both aren't really in the best position right now.
Especially Boston, right?
Especially Boston.
Yeah.
I can't believe I said that.
But again,
did that really just come out?
but then again, like, and it's true. I think too, the other part of it is money does talk. And especially for a guy like money talks. And really, they could say, we'll give you $6.5 million a year. You can't say no to that. If he's going to say, I'll take it, but you got to sign me for 6 years, they might do it.
Yeah,
they might do it.
I mean, Boston and Philly are the same city, aren't they?
Pretty much. One is meaner than the other, I think.
I can't stand either of them. So.
Yeah. But it's definitely an interesting time right now when it comes to the off-season stuff, because there's so many teams who are kind of like, what do we do? And changes, like you say, Tampa is a good example of that. Vancouver is a really good example of that. For me, anyway. I mean, it's so close to home, but But there's a lot of teams. Calgary, another example. Like they had a really good year this year, but obviously they weren't good enough to make the playoffs.
In technicality, points wise, they were good enough, but because St. Louis had more wins, St. Louis made it in, Calgary didn't.
And that's not like no team strives to be just barely good enough, right? Like they want to be contenders, they want to be able to win the cup. What does Calgary need to do now to improve for next year?
Sign Sam Bennett.
That'd be so funny for him to go back.
It's funny, but it's not impossible. It could totally happen.
The reason that is fresh in my mind because I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and they went, "How the hell did Daryl Sutter not have a spot for Sam Bennett in his lineup?"
He's a Sutter type of player,
especially now, eh? Like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But that could probably get us to the current situation we're looking at with the second round, unless you have more round one.
We kind of didn't go through all the teams in the first round, but we can do it real quick if you want.
Okay,
we're actually watching the second round game right now between Washington and Carolina, so it's probably safe to say that Washington beat Montreal in their series. Unfortunately for Habs fans, that one was a bit of a quick one too. Washington won 4, Montreal only won 1 game.
Yep.
But
to be fair, that was expected. I went into that series and I was like, because the Habs like squeaked into the playoffs.
They did.
They squeaked in. Literally, it was the last day of the regular season, and they won their game and they made it into the playoffs. And then they end up facing the number 2 team in the NHL, basically, right? So I was not shocked at all to see that series go the way it did.
It's. You see the reactions on social media from a lot of Habs fans, and you wonder, it's like, what really did you guys expect?
What were you expecting? Exactly.
I mean, as you said, you barely made it into the playoffs. You did. Congratulations. That's great. That's a big stride for your team and your fan base and your ownership, everybody, right? The players. But you're playing the second best team in the league throughout the season with a guy who just broke the all-time goal-scoring record, is absolutely on fire. Like, this team is set. They're a great team. They've got everything from offense, defense, goaltending, special teams. Like, they're unstoppable, right? I mean, what did you expect? Did you really think it was going to go 7? I mean, it could.
Hey, yeah, anything's possible.
Anything's possible in the playoffs. You get hot, right? Mm-hmm. But unlikely.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Not surprising at all.
Same thing with Carolina over New Jersey. That one was weird for me. I mean, I didn't have New Jersey winning that series, but I didn't think it was going to be like that.
I think a lot of it, and I think you would agree, but a lot of it came down to injuries with New Jersey. Like, just felt like all their best players were hurt, basically, going into it.
Yeah.
And going into the playoffs in general, it felt like they were kind of limping into the playoffs, too. So, that's going to happen sometimes.
Yep. And obviously, we alluded to Toronto beat out Ottawa, going up 3-0 in the series. Ottawa gave him a run.
I mean, Ottawa's a bit of a heart attack there for a little bit. So
I went into that series, and I hate to toot my own horn, but I went into that series calling it a 6-game series, and Toronto would win in 6, and that's exactly what happened. It was an entertaining series from an outside perspective. I enjoyed it. I thought, and that's hard for me sometimes to say as a Canuck fan, like looking at teams like Toronto or Edmonton or whatever, and saying that was an entertaining series. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun hockey.
Yeah, it had a bit of the the rough and the grumble in regards to the games that were played, especially when Ottawa won that second game, and they seem to be carrying a bit of momentum. You're kind of like, I don't know what's going to happen in that game 6, but Toronto lived up to the moniker that Berube has as a coach.
That anxiety, my friend, that's called PTSD from being a lifelong Leafs fan.
9 years of the same crap every year.
Blowing leads all the time.
Only 9?
Yeah.
I mean, I know you guys went so long without going in the playoffs, too. There was a long time that you guys weren't in the playoffs, so I totally get that.
And now they have the longest streak for most consecutive playoff appearances, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because, it was like prior to that, it was like Detroit was in the playoffs every year. I want to say for like 20 years.
I think it was 23 consecutive seasons, but that ended about 4 years ago.
And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, we're looking at somebody like Buffalo, who hasn't been in the playoffs for 14 years. That's crazy to me.
How does that team have any capital, any revenue?
Or
running a team.
Leafs fans buy tickets, buddy.
They're masochists. What can I tell you?
Yeah. So that's what happened in the East. The West, we had Dallas over Colorado. That was We knew that
Fun
was going to be a
series.
behemoth
Fun
series.
series. So fun.
Rantanen took over
It's
Game
literally
7.
Rantanen's playoffs right now, guys.
Yeah, it is.
Like, it's hard for me right now, and I don't want to sort of jump ahead too much, but it's really hard for me right now to say that Dallas isn't the best team in the West, right? Especially with somebody like Rantanen. The guy scored like every single game of the playoffs. He's got, I think he broke an NHL record. I heard this on the radio today.
Yeah, two
broke
consecutive games for hat tricks.
Two consecutive games
Wow.
for hat tricks. No other player has ever done that.
Yeah.
Mario Lemieux is the most previous, and I think he had something like 9 goals or 9 points
Yeah.
consecutively in the NHL playoffs, and now he's broken that record. So incredible stuff, and it just keeps getting better.
And that's with most of that series, or actually might have been all of that series without Jason Robertson.
Yeah.
And Miro Heiskanen.
Yeah. It's a combination of obviously they've got the scoring going, they've got the defense going, and their goaltending is incredible.
Yeah.
Ottinger's an incredible goalie.
Really good goalie. Yeah.
Really good.
Which kind of will lead me into the second round, considering who they're playing. But before we get into that, let's talk about that other series in the West.
Ooh, Winnipeg and the Blues.
Another fun series.
Oh,
tell me this first round was not the most fun round of hockey.
Yeah, I agree. That was probably the most exciting Game 7, and just how the end of the third happened, obviously.
Be honest. Who were you cheering for in that first round between those two teams?
Blues and the Jets.
St. Louis.
You were cheering St. Louis.
I was cheering Jets.
100%.
I was cheering St. Louis too.
All day long.
And I have nothing against the Jets at all, but I just felt like here's the thing. I just felt like they won the President's Trophy. They deserve to lose in the first round. That was my mentality. I've seen the President's Trophy team basically S the B every first round, and so I just felt like it had to happen.
You said S my B.
Yeah.
Leafs
do never win the President's Trophy, okay? So
yeah, exactly.
You'll have this guy definitely against you.
Ever since the year with the Canadian division, there isn't a single other Canadian team that I can stand.
But I'll tell you something though. That Game 7 was so much fun.
Oh, man.
St. Louis goes into it. There's literally 2 minutes left in the third period, and they have a 2-goal lead. And then all of a sudden, Winnipeg scores.
Well, and Perfetti, I think he scored.
Perfetti was incredible.
Yeah, he scored I guess that's the shortest amount of time to score a game time goal was the 1.6 seconds.
1.6 seconds
that were left.
It showed videos of St. Louis fans at bars already cheering,
ready to go.
Yeah. Oh!
Dreams come crashing
pop
down.
That balloon in a hurry.
Man, would I have loved to have been a fly on that wall when that overtime goal was scored, though. Hey,
man, oh god,
I couldn't
you can imagine all of Winnipeg was probably just honking horns, cheering.
Yep.
You could probably hear your neighbor from 16 blocks down.
I will
16 blocks, 16 kilometers. The sound would just carry
of the whole city. Yeah. I will say, it brought back some PTSD for me as a Canuck fan. Thinking about 2011, they played Chicago in the first round. That game ended up going to overtime. And it was the overtime goal scored by Alex Burrows that brought them past the Dragon. They slayed the Dragon. Thank you, John Shorthouse, for that statement. They slayed the Dragon, and they ended up taking it all the way to the finals. I'm sure that's exactly what Winnipeg fans are thinking too, but there's a lot more hockey to be played. And after the first game of the second round that they just played against Dallas, who knows what happens at this point.
So other than the win, what's the biggest takeaway from that series?
My biggest takeaway was it ain't over till it's over. That's literally what I kept saying. Literally what I kept saying.
My takeaway is what's wrong with Hellebuck? And are they going to be able to sustain that?
That's just it, right? When I was thinking about sort of the comparable with Ottinger being such a great goalie, Ottinger's had an incredible playoff so far. On the sort of contextual opposite of the spectrum, what is happening with Hellebuck? I wonder if he's dealing with an injury. My mentality is is he dealing with something? But Hellebuck also kind of gave up some interesting goals in the Four Nations tournament as well, where I really felt like, he's not himself.
The big stage isn't for him, maybe?
Yeah, he's maybe not a big game goalie. It's funny, St. Louis and Winnipeg, obviously it was Canada versus the U.S. in regards to the goaltending with Binnington, however, on the American team and Hellebuck on the Canadian team.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just, he can't handle the big stage. Winnipeg's got a really strong defense in regards to not even just their defense core. Obviously, their forwards play strong defensively too. And so, maybe that's what Hellebuck needs to have all the time to succeed. But even then, you can't just rely on your forwards and defense. Your goaltending has to be good. It's proven that it needs to be good, and they squeaked it. It was a fun game to watch, and it was Mikko Rantanen against the Winnipeg Jets in round 2 so far in game 1.
Oh, man.
He.
But I mean, he literally just continued off from his final game in round 1. Like, just incredible to watch him play and take the game on his shoulders. It just goes to show the big talking point that we're seeing. I think we're getting ahead of ourselves right now, but the big talking point we're seeing a lot is did Colorado give up on him too quickly? And it really looks like that's exactly what happened. Oh, totally. I mean, they maybe they sold high on him because they didn't have faith in him, but I think that was their mistake, really, in the long run.
Nate Mack must be sick.
Oh,
sick to his stomach right now.
Trade me to Vancouver.
Quite literally.
There's one more series in the first round we have not yet talked about in the West, and that would be Edmonton and LA. I know we touched on it, but
so we didn't really talk about Vegas, Minnesota either.
That's true too. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about those before we move on.
Sure. I mean, Vegas over Minnesota in 6 games also. Minnesota
looked good that series.
I thought it would be 7 games.
Yeah, so did I. Like, Minnesota really looked good in that series. I thought they played better than the score kind of alluded to.
So, I mean, can we pass the torch now to Minnesota as Leafs fans? Like, 8 years consecutive first-round exits? Don't ever talk about the Leafs being jumped out of the first round ever again. Seriously. Drop that crap off.
Do you know what's going to happen
cleaners
now?
And leave it there.
Do you know what's going to happen now because you said that? That's all that people are going to say to you. I caught you on the Puckn pod and you said not to chirp you, so I'm going to chirp you now.
Yeah, exactly.
Always the opposite.
People know that they can push your buttons, so they'll push your buttons. But no, you're absolutely right. I mean, honestly, like Toronto looked awesome in their series against Ottawa. We did predict that they were going to come away with it.
Yep.
But Minnesota being as good as they looked, they just weren't good enough. And they haven't been doing enough to make their team better, it seems, anyway, for the last few years. And now there's a lot of controversy behind Rossi possibly wanting out, which is like, what's going to happen?
Yeah. Would you guys consider Minnesota, I mean, obviously not a huge hockey market as far as coverage goes, but is it one of those places that maybe isn't necessarily a desirable place to sign as a free agent? Like, they have to draft all of their players. Would you think that's the case?
I find that hard to believe, yeah. I mean, Minnesota's a hockey hotbed.
Yeah.
When you think about it, it's like practically Canada.
Yeah, it
is. They love their hockey.
It's the 11th
there.
province.
Yeah, so it just, like, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense that people wouldn't want to play there.
Well, and they've got a ton of cap space opening up this offseason with the Suter and Parise contract buyouts coming down significantly.
And that may be a big reason why they haven't been able to make a lot of big moves because of that sort of dead cap that they've had. So maybe that we'll see something a lot in the offseason with them where they do improve the team.
Yeah.
Yeah, very well could be the case. And you have to wonder with the Kings if they're going to need to make some major changes and improvements too. You got Doughty and Kopitar.
The first change is they need a GM.
Yeah.
I guess, see you later, mutually part.
Yeah, really. It's always funny when you read that they mutually parted ways. Part of me wonders is like, okay, did they actually mutually part ways, or did somebody say we're parting ways, and whether you like it or not, it's happening, and you'll have to agree with it. Otherwise, I'm going to talk crap about you. I mean, who knows? Who knows what's going to
the whole mutually
there.
part ways thing? That seems to be like a recent thing, a couple of years.
Yeah,
never ever seemed to happen before. You got fired or you didn't.
Yeah, I remember that statement when Trevor Linden left Vancouver as the president of hockey ops. It was like Trevor Linden and the Vancouver Canucks have mutually parted ways. What? Why hire him if you're going to just part ways? It makes no sense.
Probably not.
There was a lot of controversy behind that. We as Canuck fans know the reason. We as Canuck fans know the reason behind that. It's because he wanted to rebuild and they didn't.
Yeah.
So
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Oh man, interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
LA's going to be a hot topic.
100%
this summer.
100%. I mean, they played a hell of a series against Edmonton when you consider the fact that they opened the series so strong. But Edmonton has been quite resilient, and I'll give them a lot of credit. They've been so resilient that you expect little of them, and then they blow it out of the water.
maybe again they're one of those teams too. Maybe if Marner is looking for big cash and they clear out some space, like he would be their main star there, and they
Play with Hyman.
need a stronger kind of D setup in LA, because obviously their defense did not hold up over.
Oh, are you talking about LA or Edmonton?
LA.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
I
okay.
assumed you were talking Edmonton.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about LA. Maybe like I said, they make some moves this offseason to clear some cap, and you can see them make a run at Marner. Marner, I think, would love it, and probably in Hollywood. So, there's that possibility.
You had people, Kings fans, say that was it game 3? It was game 3 that failed challenge happened, I think. Do you recall that at all? I think it was game 3. There are people saying that, is this a fireable offense? Because that seemed to shake up that series. Like, basically from then on, right? Because Edmonton, I think LA they were winning that game, and then they lost the challenge, and Edmonton came back, scored 3 or 4 goals, and won that game, and then that was it. They didn't look back. Yes.
Always a tough thing, right? Like, it's tough to say, like, one small moment like that can change a series, but obviously, like, hockey is such a mental game. Like, it's very possible that that's exactly what's happened, what happened to them. But, yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what LA does in the offseason. They better get a new GM before draft time, before any of the big trade stuff happens, because if you have to get somebody like their president of hockey ops doing stuff, and then they get a GM in there, it's going to be like a complete gong show. So, fun stuff.
Well, again, we can look at the second round now. And
well, before we do, let me just say one more time. That was a really fun first round. Absolutely fun. I'm really hoping we get similar stuff out of the second round. Usually that's not the case. It's usually a little bit more structured, a little bit more kind of not so much physical and stuff like that, because they got to get ready for the rest of the playoffs. But I really do hope we get some good games, at least in the second round.
Well, these are going to be some grinding games in the second round right now.
Now, this game we're currently watching, this is Carolina at Washington. And,
never mind.
That was a replay. Carolina at Washington. It's currently 2-1 in the third period for Washington. This is game number 2. Carolina leads the series 1-0. Did you guys get a chance to watch game 1? I didn't either.
No, I haven't.
So I can't really comment on the.
I honestly, I have about enough time to watch the Leafs if they play, and then maybe catch a bit of whatever Western Conference team is playing, and then that's kind of it. Yeah.
And I've had my focus so much on Abbotsford Canucks games, really, when it comes to the playoffs right now. I haven't even had a chance to watch many of the second round games yet. But talk a little bit about maybe the Leafs' first game against. Who the hell are you guys? Oh, yeah, Florida.
Florida. They played 2 now, right?
Yeah.
They played 2.
They have played 2. That's right. Yeah.
What happened in that first game, Paul? Get into it.
I love the start the Leafs had. Obviously going up 3 goals to basically start the game. Willie Nylander just being magnificent. It's been a grinding first 2 games.
Kind of what you expect, right?
Yeah, definitely from that series. The fact that that the Leafs beefed up to, obviously, in the offseason and at the trade deadline. As much as I love Sam Bennett's style of play, I hate how dirty a player he is. And taking out Stolarz, again, he might not be out for the long term. There's still a possibility of him coming back before.
He did not travel with the team to Florida, though, from what I've heard.
But there's a possibility he still might be back before the end of the series if Florida wins a game or 2.
Unless Toronto sweeps it, that'd be great.
I'd love it if Toronto did. But having to switch goalies mid-game, it's a bit scary. Wall hadn't played for about, I believe it was 20 straight days.
18 days, because he played the last game of the year.
Yeah. So he's fresh.
He's fresh, but
too fresh maybe, because he's got injury history too.
Yeah.
So you come in cold like that, I'm just like, oh my god,
it's nerve-wracking. I know.
No warm up.
I will say, from my perspective, just watching, say, like you and you, Paul, not so much you in terms of the show of fear, but I can see it in Brandon when he talks about the Leafs, and it's PTSD, like you say, like you just expect the worst to happen, right? And so these kind of things are frustrating when you're cheering for a team to go all the way, and you see these like blatant things, like a guy running into your goalie or hitting your goalie or whatever,
and no supplemental discipline,
that's right,
as there never is with Sam Bennett.
Can I say something that's interesting? Watching or listening on the radio today, I think it was, where I heard an interview with a guy, and it was like just an analyst or whatever. In fact, it was a Toronto analyst. Forget his name, but he actually said, I know Leaf fans are going to be mad at me when I say this, but I don't think it was an intent to injure. I think, and he goes, I don't even think he hit him with his elbow. He's like, I think his glove bumped him. I think this, that, and the other. And I was just like, oh, Leaf fans are not going to be happy to hear that.
Unless his hand goes from his elbow to the tips of his fingers.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No.
So we'll get into this here because, believe it or not, Paul and I differ. And I don't think there should have been a suspension.
Right.
So here's the thing. I still think it's a dirty play because he knows exactly what the heck he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing going in there. Oh, I'm driving hard to the net. Halfway into the crease, dude? No, you're not. Yeah. Okay? Yes, I think there's an elbow there. It's not. I don't think it's a hard elbow. It's there's not a movement where he's not swinging back his arm and moving forward. It's basically as he's going by, he hits him in the right spot. It's in the back of the head or the back to the side of the head, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where there's just the little pad only. Right? The front, you've got the way the helmets are designed, you've got some shock absorbent, you've got the metal grate on the front, the clips there, there's a little bit more protection.
There's a little give there.
It's designed that way, right? Because not often you're going to get a puck shot from the back of the head, right?
Yeah.
So when he's coming in from that side and he kind of catches the back and the side, it's a bit of a crappy area to get hit with, for sure. And I 100% think he's doing it on purpose, but I don't think it was egregious enough to warrant a suspension.
Right.
But the referee was right there looking at it.
And didn't call anything.
Didn't call anything, not even a 2-minute minor. I would have been fine with, honestly. I know you wouldn't. I would have been. Yeah. What chaps my ass about the whole situation is that nothing was done about it.
Right.
From a Leafs perspective.
Yeah.
I know it's the playoffs. I know it's important. And believe it or not, Berube was like, no, we need to stay composed. What? Are you okay?
I know from watching the 2011 playoffs, staying composed does not win you the Stanley Cup. And I mean that. Like what Berube's talking about, I think is wrong. I think you're right. So they should have done something about it because I look at what happened with Daniel and Henrik Sedin getting punched in the face by Marchand and nobody doing anything about it.
Now,
they literally ran over them.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the Leafs need to call up Ryan Reeves, put him in for one game, take out Sam Bennett and get a suspension. I'm not talking about that.
Right.
But I'm talking about Domi going over, grabbing him by the jersey and saying, you do that again, pal.
Yeah.
Or you come within a foot of my goalie again.
Yeah. You can't tell me that Bennett's not aware of what he's doing. Like he's very, I think he's a lot more kosher about things in terms of how he plays than people give kind of credit for. Like he's pretty good at sneaking things in. I have to look at what he did to Matthew Nyes 2 years ago, and like grabbed him. It would be one thing, it'd be like kind of falling into a trap. He grabbed him and slammed him. Yeah. You can't tell me that he's not aware that his elbows out are going to hit players or possibly the goalie in the process. It might look like one motion, but he's not stupid. He knows what he's doing.
So I'm with you on that. I think I 100% agree. That's exactly what he was trying to do. I just don't think it was that bad. The Nyes one? The Nyes one, I think that should have been a suspension.
So assuming you're correct, and let's say hypothetically he didn't hit him that hard, he didn't hit him, it wasn't as egregious that would deserve a suspension. Do you believe that is what made him get the concussion? Based on that theory?
Well, he got the shot to the head at the beginning, but I don't know. I think there's something else there.
Because he was throwing up on the bench. And
have they even announced that he has a concussion officially?
No, they hasn't.
I don't think they have.
Well,
I think he's a combination of sick.
In the playoffs, they typically, and it's so funny, like I was watching TSN and they were talking about this and they're like, yeah, he's not traveling with the team, but they haven't announced yet what his injury is, and we all know it's a concussion. But
I don't know if it is,
Joe. But that's just it. That's just it. The team in the playoffs, I find teams will
back of the neck.
Teams will be as little transparent as possible, so that they don't really reveal to the other team what the injury is, so that they can't be exploited again. But I think if that is the case, I mean the guy's throwing up. Maybe he's sick and they just didn't say it. But, still sick? I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, I mean, if he's not traveling with a team, it's definitely more than him just being sick. Because by now, if he was sick the other day, he'd be fine.
Yeah.
Unless there's something else underlying going on, right?
I sent that meme to our chat the other day about, you can't keep getting away with this. But it's not even just Sam Bennett. It's the Panthers in general. There was Tkachuk trying to injure Marner at the end of the first game. It's not uncommon for Florida to be known for being dirty players, and I'm hoping the Leafs are going to pull through in this series. It's gonna be a rough series. I'm loving that they're matching the physicality of the Panthers. They did not match it 2 years ago. They are matching it this year.
Yeah. I think Florida's getting frustrated.
Yeah.
So far.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
no doubt in my mind.
You sit there
down 2-0.
Yeah, I mean the interview with Paul Maurice after the game when they asked him, because he knew that they were going to ask him about the Bennett thing.
Yeah.
And his answer was the referee was right there.
Yeah.
Right? So last night, after, and I mean, if you want to get into it, you can, there was probably a missed call. Scott Lawton boarded Evan Rodriguez.
Yes.
And that's a boarding penalty.
100%.
It may not be a major, but it's at least a 2-minute boarding penalty.
what are you talking about? It was an embellishment by Rodriguez.
Yeah, so he gets called for an embellishment, and Paul Maurice is complaining about it, and then of course the jerk in me goes, but the referee was right there. You know what I mean? So it's going to be that way all series. And then Berube, the post game interview after what did you think about that? It was elbow to the head. He didn't even let the reporter answer the question.
Yeah.
Right?
Fair enough.
So Paul Maurice knows what he's doing. He's a very cerebral coach, for sure. But he also started getting...
sorry to interrupt.
I was just going to say, he started getting very frustrated. Paul Maurice left the interview early because he was mad, right?
I will say, I have all the time in the world for Paul Maurice. I think he's a really good coach. And whether you agree or not, I think he's a really good coach. And actually, you talk about a player's coach. He's probably a good example of that. I mean, considering what he was able to do last year with Florida.
Yeah.
They had a great team, but I think ultimately, like, he knows how to run those lines. He knows how to play. It's like playing chess, right? Like running the right lines to match other lines and stuff on the other side. And it's impressive to watch.
In game 2, did you notice Sam Bennett?
No.
No.
That line has been shut down. Lundell, Marchand, and Luosterainen are the line that's been noticeable.
Well, I think Florida knows exactly what they got away with, and they're shielding him. They didn't even make him available to the media after the first game.
Yeah.
They're shielding him. Who did you notice last night, though?
On Florida or
on Florida?
Kulikov?
Brad Marchand.
Yeah, that too, yeah.
He was a dick.
Yeah,
He was right back to being bad.
That's what
Marchand,
he's known as, right?
So, but I didn't really see that from him game 1. Game 2, though, he was every scrum, every whistle. He was getting into it with Lawton. He was poking. He was going by the bench and throwing up his arms, and he wouldn't stop.
I will
with the
say,
chirping.
when it comes to playoff hockey, you are going to get that kind of inconsistency because they're trying to stretch out their energy so that they don't wear themselves out too quickly, and they got to take turns. They do need to take turns being a pest, basically. Really, you know, Marchand is an expert at it. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And he plays it perfectly. Like,
yeah,
everybody hates him for a reason.
Yeah.
But you know, it's definitely an interesting thing. I'm really excited to see what happens in Florida with Toronto up 2-0 now. Like, what's going to happen in these next 2 games to either tie the series or maybe Toronto takes an even bigger lead? That would be exciting to see.
Yeah, and I tell you, I'm going to knock on wood about this right now, but another player we haven't seen from Florida yet is Matthew Tkachuk. Yeah. Other than try to hurt Marner or, you know, do a couple of silly things after the whistle, he's been basically invisible.
How fun would it be, though, for you guys to say you took out both Tkachuk brothers?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's obviously you want to
have an end goal.
You have an end goal. You want to take it one game at a time, but I think I'm never not going to be nervous.
Yeah.
But I'm happy with the way they're playing.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to say this 100 times during the course of our podcast probably, but I had no idea how good Chris Tanev was, man. I really had no idea. You know, our buddy Riley said he was the best defenseman in the league a couple of years ago. We're like, dude, whatever. I mean, he was not the best defenseman in the league, but he's the best defenseman on this team. 100%. Him and Jake McCabe as a pairing, man, good luck. Everything is to the outside, and plays get killed now. Instantly.
It is hard to find defensemen, players in general, not just defensemen, who literally put their faces on the line to stop a puck. He'll never live that down as being the guy who will willingly put his face in front of a shot to stop the puck from going in his own net.
Did you see the body check last night where he tweaked his shoulder?
Yep.
I thought, oh, God. Please no. Yeah. At this point, I'd almost rather lose Austin Matthews for a game or two than Chris Tanev.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, fair enough.
I can't believe I'm saying that, but it's true.
I hear you. No, 100%.
You can always find a way to score goals, but if you don't have the right guys in place to kill plays, make that first pass, keep everything to the outside like he does, block shots. Like the block shots last night in that game, sorry to dwell on it so much, but it's just I'm really happy about it.
Yeah.
23 block shots for the Leafs, 8 block shots for Florida.
Wow.
Big difference. Well, they're not the only pairing that's been noticeable. Playoff Riley, I should say, not just Riley. Playoff Riley and Carlo have been fantastic.
Carlo, man, again, you don't really notice it as much when he's on the opposite side, although maybe that's a good thing. He just does the right things and you don't think about it that much, but when you have an 18-foot long stick and your stride is pretty smooth, you can make a good first pass, it's hard not to be excited. He's not overly physical, but he doesn't need to be because you can't get by him anyway.
He takes shots. Like he had the same amount of shots as Matthews last night, and they both had the most on the team.
Gentlemen, we need to quickly talk about some of the other games in the second round because we've only got a few minutes left. We were talking earlier a little bit about Dallas and Winnipeg.
Yep.
Amazing first game for Dallas. I mean, like we talked.
One second. Again, Rantanen and Winnipeg. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yes, amazing first game for Rantanen, but I will say Dallas has played well defensively as well when you consider it. But Winnipeg almost came back and tied the game, so it was a heck of a first game for the second round for these guys. But I mean, how far could Rantanen go to carry this team?
So what Joe's alluding to is that Dallas won yesterday.
Yes,
just for clarification, over Winnipeg.
Yeah,
3-2 the final score.
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
And then we also have Vegas and Edmonton. We thought Vegas was going to win the game. It was 2-0 for the longest time. And then all of a sudden, Edmonton scores.
Comeback Kings.
Goal.
Comeback Kings.
Incredible stuff. And like I say, I've poo-pooed on Edmonton all year. And obviously, this is what's lifting them up. So
you're not poo-pooing on them, though, because they're a bad team.
I poo-poo on them because I don't like them.
That's right.
But
they deserve to poo-poo because it's
But I mean,
poo-poo.
for me, it's always been warranted to poo-poo on them because of the fact that they don't do the things they're supposed to do in the offseason, like get goaltending, right?
Tell me this is not becoming a thing.
Poo-poo. But
they have a chance to poo-poo on them because they do. So.
But they don't do things like focus on getting good goaltending. They're sticking with Skinner. They're sticking with it's actually Calvin Pickard that's been basically carrying the team.
He's 5-0 now.
Credit to him. If if his contract's up this year, I guarantee you he decides to go UFA, people will pay money to have him on their team.
Totally.
Considering just how he played in the playoffs. So good on him. Their defense hasn't lived up to what it's supposed to be. So they're relying a lot on scoring, really.
Well, and it's 5 straight games for them right now. It could be six again tonight.
Yeah.
We're recording obviously on Thursday here, but they might even have won 7 straight games by the time this podcast comes out.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible stuff. Unfortunately, gentlemen, we have run out of time. We're at 57 minutes.
Yep.
I just wanted to, before we wrap up the show, I just want to give a huge shout out and acknowledgement to Rogers TV.
Yeah.
You can now watch our podcast on Rogers TV. So hello to everybody watching on television. We're very grateful for them to let us show our podcast on TV, so it's pretty exciting stuff. But if you're not watching on Rogers TV and you are watching us on YouTube, you can also listen to our podcast wherever you get podcasts. That's Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it. You can find us at any podcast. Or you can also check out our social media, which of course is at the Puckn Pod on Twitter, on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. Is there anything that I'm forgetting in terms of social media?
YouTube.
I should have a list. YouTube. I should have a list right here. But yeah, of course, YouTube. We're on YouTube, of course, as well. And you can watch us there, too. Well, gentlemen, anything you'd like to touch on before we say goodbye?
Maybe the fact that Washington's about to win Game 2, so that series will be tied 1-1 with Carolina. And
always a fun stuff. Yeah. Always a fun thing when you get a tight series like that, especially
if it's not going to be any of the Canadian teams winning the Cup, I wouldn't mind seeing Ovi win one more.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm rooting for Dallas in terms of if I'm choosing a team that's not a Canadian team, I think I'm rooting for Dallas. If it is a Canadian team, I'm probably going Leafs here, guys. I know.
Wow.
I know that's hard to believe. It's a toss up. It's a toss. Before Brandon dies, it's a toss up between the Leafs and Winnipeg, I will say. But if it's an Eastern team, I think I'm rooting for the Leafs here.
I would love a Winnipeg and Leafs final.
It'd be amazing.
And Tanev, I'd love
honestly,
that.
Just knowing that the Cup's coming back to Canada would be incredible.
Yeah, it would be.
Well, gentlemen, one more time for the Puckn Pod. My name is Joe.
My name is Brandon.
And I'm Paul.
We will see you guys in the next one.